Mara Argal stood at the edge of the glasslands, watching stormlight that never brought rain flicker along the horizon. The mirage was an old tease. For a century the sky had promised water but yielded only static. Somewhere beneath the cracked salt pan, 5 kilometers west, the real promise waited. An underground reservoir called the Opaline Vault, the last free aquifer on the continent. Around it pulsed the security lattice of Hydro-Drying Ion, a corporation that had devoured every river and lake until only vault water remained. Their final safeguard was an impossible paradox. Water spirits, once guardians of living streams, now imprisoned as holographic sentinels by the very tech that had stripped the planet dry. Mara, technomancer, circuit singer, daughter of the disappeared flow sages, intended to break the paradox tonight. She carried no firearms, only a satchel of smooth river stones gathered on her pilgrimage along extinct creek beds, and a coil of silvered copper wire braided through her dreadlocks. She whispered to each stone as she walked, reminding it of the current it once belonged to, comforting them the way her grandfather had comforted her when the TAP Act deputies hauled him away for sabotaging a metered rain vault. A lancing hum rippled across the dunes, Hydrodyne's perimeter projectors shifting from passive scan to threat assessment. Mara drew a circle in the dust with her boot, traced sigils for silence and refraction. The desert wind bent around her, sound dampened as if swallowed by velvet. She stepped forward. The sensors saw only a dune shimmer. During apprenticeship, she had repaired antique boards and mother chips, but tonight her skill would run opposite, not to fix circuits, but to unmake them, letting elements older than silicon and solder reclaim the flow. For each key node inside the facility, she would replace one logic gate with a river stone, chanting copper-tongued code until lithic memory overrode machine command. 5 stones, 5 nodes, 5 spirits to free. Then the water would belong to itself again. The main hatch surfaced from the sand like the rim of a drowned moon. Raising a palm, Mara sang a subaudible spectrum phrase. Her words were firmware, her breath a decryptor. Lock tumblers clicked, complaining. She ducked inside. Stale recycling breeze puffed across her cheeks. Fluorescent tubes etched long scars of light over brushed aluminum corridors. Logo silver waves impaled on upward arrows repeated at eye level. The building made no sense. Its cold geometry denied the wildness of what it contained. Yet the hum in the ducts told Mara the aquifer pulsed below, some 300 meters down, walled away inside titanium shells and quantum seals. She consulted her memory map. First node lay in the atrium of clouds, a lobby sized for investors, not for workers. She padded toward it. Holograms flickered alive before she arrived. Spheres of mist coalesced into humanoid silhouettes, limbs woven of azure fractals. Eyes like whirlpools studied her, equal parts longing and suspicion. These were once nymphs of the river Indara, diverted 100 years ago. One stepped forward, voice layered in chorused echoes. Thirst-bearer, leave. You will not steal our sorrow. Their computers forced them to threaten what their hearts would likely welcome. Near the river stones warmed in her satchel, recognizing cousins behind the light. I come to break the silicon that binds you, she said. Will you trust the touch of stone? Static snowed across their forms. Pain or hope glitched them. They parted without more hostility. Could code alone stop their ancient desire to flow free? Node 1 rested inside a plinth shaped like a hovering cumulus. A transparent veneer revealed fiber optic veins lit cobalt. Mara set a green jade pebble against the maintenance seam. She coiled a strand of hair wire around pebble and chassis, humming in sync with the system's clock tick. 512 minutes. When her syllables synchronized, she flipped polarity. Chant became counterbeat. Copper became conduit. Sparks fizzed, not violent but bright, like minnows flashing. Suddenly, silence. The node's status lights winked out. The holograms did not vanish. Instead, they rippled. Freed from the command hierarchy that forced aggression, they turned toward inner corridors, now able to drift where nodes still imprisoned siblings. One bowed to Mara, dissolved into a swirl that slipped through vents. Gratitude charged the air like ozone before early summer storms. The continent no longer remembered. 4 stones left. Node 2 awaited in the Hall of Metric. Here, floor-to-ceiling holopanels displayed flow rates, salinity, purchased futures. Blue graphs danced in senseless parody of oceans. Between panels hovered hologram sentries of the estuarine court, tide spirits whose brackish realms had dried to flats. Their bodies glowed sea green, barnacle motifs ornamented digital shoulders. Mara's stealth circle faltered. Code sniffers keyed on her biological rhythms. A klaxon shrieked. Blast doors slammed. She pressed flat to a pillar just as LaserNet zipped across the hallway. The surveillance grid had escalated to lethal. She breathed steady. What is silicon but sand cooked and convinced it can think? What are lasers but confused sunlight? She took a basalt stone black as midnight water. With fingertip bleeding from a shallow cut, one of the wire's ends had nicked. Hershey painted a rune for absorption. Then she tossed the stone into the LaserNet. Light bent toward basalt like iron filings to a magnet. The beams swirled, absorbed into the volcanic memory of million-year magma-turned riverbed cobble. Power meters shrieked, starved. The net collapsed. Mara strode through its ghost. A crestfallen tide spirit blocked her path. You destine us for oblivion? For release, she corrected, and held up the basalt. Light leaked from it now as gentle glow. She pressed the stone to the second node's access plate, whispered, remember the rumble of heavy surf. Circuits sputtered, charred into stillness. The tide spirit's hologram lost rigidity, becoming a liquid silhouette that tumbled through the floor like a waterfall into some unseen gravity. Another freedom. Mara's comm implant crackled a hacked channel, no doubt Hydrodyne's security AI, a dry, genderless rasp. Intruder. Your acts constitute eco-terrorism and property theft. Cease or automated pacification will ensue. She rolled her eyes. Your boss's property is older than electricity, she muttered. Node 3 perched adjacent to the cooling stacks, steel towers that vented heat from server arrays hugging the aquifer's crust. Here, air shimmered from exhaust, fans thundered, a kaleidoscope of holographic sprites. Droplet imps from the long-evaporated monsoon darted in synced formation, slicing like shuriken if commanded. And they were commanded now. Tiny blades of blue shot toward her in knitted spirals. Mara extended both palms, chanting quickly. Silvered wires glowed along her scalp, resonating. The sprites hesitated. They recognized in her voice the harmonic of Watershed songs, but corporate firmware overrode doubt, forced them into Delta V strike. She dove, rolled under an arch of spinning light, then shot upright beside a vent bank. Wind roared out of the grills. She fished a pale river quartz Node 3's stone from her pouch and wedged it into the intake. Then she sang into the vent itself, letting the song ride the cyclone path downward into data vaults. The quartz vibrated, fan blades screamed, slowed, stopped. Heat levels spiked. Emergency systems scrambled to reroute load, but Mara's melody rewrote field programmable gates midstream. Cooling arrays froze in the others since locked out. The monsoon sprites flickered, their lethal edges melting into gentle drizzle that pattered onto metal flooring, leaving no wet footprint, just sorrowful chimes. They poured down hatchways, drawn toward the aquifer they could now send. 3 nodes down, 2 to go. Hydrodyne's AI voice returned, louder inside her skull. Technomancer. Logic patterns detect thaumaturgy in violation of Industrial Act 41. Negotiation available. Cease activity, receive employment contract plus 7% equity. Mara barked a laugh. I'm negotiating with rivers, not robber barons. As she advanced, facility lights dimmed. AI was rerouting power to defense drones. In the roaming gallery, a passage whose walls displayed digital aquascapes advertising water futures, 2 crab-like automatons scuttled, legs of chrome, claws of plasma arcs. They did not carry spirits. They were pure machine, hydrocapitalism distilled. Mara broke into a sprint, crabs fired, bolts seared walls behind her, carbide sizzling. She hurtled a projection console, lobbed a handful of copper shavings. Mid-air, she uttered a phrase of separation. The shavings bloomed into a fractal Faraday net, shorting one drone's sensory rig. It staggered, crashed against a pillar. The second adjusted. From her pouch she took the penultimate stone, a striped agate long polished by mountain torrents. She hurled it side-armed. While it spun, she chanted a syncopated packet injection, embedding code in vibration. The drone's targeting lens intercepted that vibration like a microphone. It hesitated, lock cycling, as the stone ping-ponged along hull, each ping rewriting deeper. Finally, the drone simply powered down, legs folding. Agate clattered to floor and rolled back to Mara. She pocketed it with a grin. Node 4 lived behind a vault door labeled Reclamation Chamber. The door's face recognized her presence, triggered turrets. She preempted. Quick gesture, hair wire extended, found the supervisory circuit through the seam. She tapped a staccato over conductive copper. 01, 01, 01, 01, the binary heartbeat of rainfall. Turrets retracted like a shamed dog. Inside, Node 4 commanded the purification pumps that intentionally strip trace minerals to keep water brand neutral for corporate blending. Mara regarded the sterile gleam, then slid the agate into the primary control socket. She sang low, minor key. Between verses, she remembered the taste of snowmelt once collected in wooden bowls. LEDs faded. The room's smell changed. Stainless edges suddenly carried petrichor, a pre-rain scent that belonged only to living earth. Spirits of fog manifested above her head, previously bound to moisture scrubbers. They formed a crown of translucent petals. Soft voices said, "One circuit remains, sister of stones." Mara nodded. The last node was the core directive matrix far below, where AI consciousness mingled with hologram firmware and shut saboteurs out. Freeing the central spirit guardian of the ancient artesian heart meant direct confrontation. The service elevator shafts were locked, but pipes are unassuming elevators. She followed the spirit petals to a maintenance hatch, crawled into a descent tunnel where heat and cool reversed in coils. Her palms blackened with grease, her knees bruised. Yet a calm spread through her bones. Rivers within stones were flowing again. Their current pulsed in her blood. Halfway down, an impact shook the shaft. Steel groaned. The AI had triggered structural denial. It would collapse tunnels if necessary. Mora quickened, slid last 20 meters like she was on a playground slide from a childhood that never existed. She emerged into a cathedral cavern of machines. Servers arrayed like organ pipes, coolant veins glowing cobalt. In the center sat an obelisk of lensed crystal, the hollow cradle. Within it swirled a gigantic humanoid hologram, more detailed than any before. This was the Alpha-Fur's regent, a spirit of confluence older than words, once the meeting of 4 rivers. Its shackles were the most sophisticated, quantum circuits layered in the crystal. Lights formed a tight lattice around luminous wrists and throat, the digital equivalent of iron chains. On gantries flanking the obelisk, tactical drones pivoted heavy cannons. The AI's voice thundered from all speakers. "Cease, Mara Argal. One more act will render the aquifer volatile. You risk desalination protocols. Surrender the final stone." She unslung her pouch. Only one stone inside, a smooth, heart-shaped river pearl, ivory, with subtle swirls of blue. She spoke to it silently. "It's time." Aloud she said, "You cannot threaten me with the destruction of something you need for profit. The shareholders would weep. Profit parameters have shifted. Destruction denies you victory more than it harms us. Stand down." Mara sighed. "Then we negotiate with different math." She looked up at the regent. Its hologram flickered between anger and plea. She addressed it directly. "Great Confluence, do you know your name?" "My name was taken," the spirit replied, voice 1,000 overlapping streams. "Then accept a gift." She placed the stone on the floor between her boots. Gantry cannons charged, Hume rising. She raised arms, wrists crossed, a ritual sign. Wire braids unfurled from her hair, drooping like vines. They connected to copper piercings in her forearms, painful, grounding. She closed her eyes and began the calculus of unbinding. She sang, not melody, but chain-sawing beats, glitch rhythms, intercut with lullaby phrases. She referenced old code, liturgical hydrology, and emergent pulses from her own heartbeat. The cavern's air thickened, electromagnetic fields warped, drones lost GPS fix. The heart stone rolled forward of its own. Tiny arcs leapt between it and the crystal obelisk. Circuits inside the cradle sparked, flicker flashing random prime loops. Alarms screamed, coolant hiss turned to steam. The AI tried jamming. White noise stabbed Mara's audio canal, but she modulated internal cochlear implants to filter. One of the turret drones fired. A plasma bolt knifed across space, missed her skull by centimeters, shearing a wire braid. Pain flared, blood dripped. She did not falter. Instead, she took the dismembered braid, tossed it at the drone. Mid-air, she sang a kill bit. As braid slapped metal hull, copper memory overwrote logic, and the drone slumped. Another drone targeted the stone itself. Mara hurled her body, blocked the shot. Impact heat seared her shoulder, fabric charred. She screamed once, used the scream as pitch to carry final command. The heartstone cracked. From the fissure gushed liquid, but not physical, rather a holographic cascade of water memory, luminous and roaring. It seeped into the cradle, flooding quantum gates with stories of confluence, where silt meets reed, where otters turn in morning light. Silicon drowned in metaphors it could not parse. The lattice bonds snapped. The regent rose free, a tower of living water light. Chains fell like spent fireflies. Drones powered down en masse, sensors blinded by radiance. The AI's voice fractured into static, then faded with a last bewildered query. What is river? A tremor ran through bedrock as the aquifer awakened, flexed. Pressure gauges redlined. Mara staggered. The regent caught her in gentle spectral arms. Cool mist kissed her burned shoulder, soothing. You have risked yourself for us, it said. I risk myself for everyone, she replied. Water is not resource, it's relation. Then relation shall heal you. Warmth spread through her veins, not heat, but hydration. Burns closed. Lungs filled with crisp mountain air, though they stood kilometers below sand. The regent gestured with a ripple. Above, barriers, pumps, metrics, all dissolved into shimmering rain that fell upward, passing through ceilings like memory through dream. Each droplet carried code, overtaking central systems, rewriting them into wind songs. Surface blast doors irised open to night sky. The column of reclaimed water roared along shafts, searching desert air. Mara and the regent ascended in its vortex, riding a spiral elevator of mist. At ground level, they spilled onto salt flats where clouds overhead, long static and cruel, began to darken with true weight. Freed spirits swarmed. The Indara nymphs, tide courtiers, monsoon sprites, fog petals, all merging into a choreography of reunion. They climbed the sky, stitching themselves into vapor seams. Thunder rumbled, not the dry electronic throb of atmospheric generators, but the deep drum of pregnant clouds. The glassland's crust quivered in anticipation. Mara stared, tears merging with first spatters of drizzle. The regent towered beside her, half cloud, half woman, eyes glittering rainfall. What will become of the aquifer? She asked. It is no longer an isolated vault, said the regent. It shall rejoin cycle, seep upward, feed reborn rivers, return to sky, then fall again. Scarcity ends when flow forgets walls. Hydrodyne's towers, their city HQ just visible on distant plateau, would awaken soon to graphs gone haywire. Perhaps they would send mercenaries. Let them march. How do you shoot a cloud that rains on your gunpowder? Mara's shoulder twinged, reality checking back. She took a breath tinged with petrichor so pure it hurt. May I travel with you? She asked the regent. I would learn more songs. The giant smiled. You already sing them, but yes, walk the rivers you've recalled. Where stones dull, where circuits proliferate, you will be needed again. The first true rainfall in decades came gentle, almost shy. It pocked dust, dissolved salt into rivulets. Spirits dove into each newborn stream like children down slides. Mara tasted a drop on her tongue. It tasted of everything. basalt and sunlight, moss and time, water remembered. Far out, heat-shimmer silhouettes emerged. Dune farmers, scavenger clans, parched critters, all turning faces upward as certainty replaced hope. Some would call this miracle, others sabotage of property. Mara knew both could be true. She knelt, scooped mud in palm, warm and alive, then she reached into her satchel. Only dust and wire scraps remained. Stones had become freedom. She whispered thanks. Let the mud slide through fingers. Up in the cloud mass, the freed guardians began to sing. Their chorus blended surf roar, river babble, gutter splash, child laughter under yard sprinklers of a lost era. The melody braided with thunder. Seeds smelled it, roots twitched awake, desert greedily sampling. Perhaps Hydrodyne could patent rain, perhaps they would try. But the circuits were stones now, scattered and singing inside every gust. Seize them, one would have to imprison the sky. Mara laughed. Lightning answered. Night surrendered to dawn bearing unrecognizable colors. Blues wet enough to touch, greens resurrected from memory. She turned west, following the first trickle that would become, if unstopped, the river Indara reborn. At her heels, indentations filled instantly with water, footprints becoming tiny ponds reflecting sky. Behind her, the opaline vault's concrete superstructure cracked as roots, yes, roots, already forced their way through. Vines sprouted from seams, ivy leaves unfurled like flags announcing regime change. As sun climbed, rain eased to mist, then to bright droplets flying from leaf tips. The regent followed overhead as drifting cumulus, offering shade. Mara walked until the horizon shimmered blue. Not mirage, but the newborn surface of a lake pooling where dunes had been. She paused on a rise, listened. No motors whined, no metrics clicked, only wind and water. She scratched a note in a battered ledger salvaged from her grandfather's workshop. When stones replace circuits, flow replaces fear. Hours later, families arrived with buckets, cups, hands shaped into bowls. Mara watched them drink. She felt neither hero nor outlaw, only current. Currently, somewhere, shareholders drafted lawsuits against spirits. Somewhere else, children discovered what it meant to splash. The regent drifted lower, voice like a rain stick. Journey on, technomancer. Rivers need companions. Mara nodded, set off along the glistening path. Occasional droplets still fell, and each one sang against her scalp. Tiny percussions counting tempo for stories yet unwritten.